Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome to another episode of Behind the Food podcast. Unfortunately, Jimmy is under the weather today, so he will not be with us. So it's just me, but we have a fantastic guest with us today. We have Gale, and Jimmy was really excited about this episode, Gale, because he loves working with you. As far as I understand it, he works with you for co-manufacturing for No Bake Cookie dough. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Fantastic. And how did you meet Jimmy? How did that relationship start?
That's how he came into. So I recently acquired Ice Cream Factory, and in addition to my other areas of business, and so we began kind of communicating around that. And he's looking for a co-packer, that kind of thing. So we got into those kind of conversations. But we've had a lot of really great conversations around food products and the CPG world and all of that. So he invited me on this podcast. So.
Fantastic. Yeah, we love Shannon. He had a fantastic episode talking about the ice cream factory and spinning up, internal manufacturing and doing it themselves, which is something that Jimmy did originally, right? He manufactured his own product and then discovered that while it has, advantages when it comes to margin, it also has operational challenges as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So how did you come to the world of CPG? Like, what was your first kind of touch point to that?
Yeah, so I started in the food business in 2009, and it was kind of after the economy had just tanked, right? And so I was a single mom trying to support my kids, and I was like, I'm going to sell cupcakes, and literally just trying to figure out what to do at the time while I regrouped, and it started out that way. I sold cupcakes for a while, and that was kind of a trend, and then I'm a businesswoman at heart, so it turned into a catering company. And then I was in Seattle at the time. And so Microsoft became one of my clients for catering. And from there, they wanted us to manufacture some of our foods for their cafe, to sell in their cafes as grab and go. So that was my first kind of entry into CPG production. We had to become a USDA manufacturer at that point. And so from there, then I started putting products into grocery stores, and then opened up a plant in Montana. And we just basically started scaling on the manufacturing side and catering still. And then COVID hit. So when COVID hit, it really did impact our business, because even our manufacturing facility in Montana was on tribal lands, and they really handled COVID differently than other areas of the country. So we really had to regroup. And I was looking at that going, I want to do this again. We have all the skills, we have all the people in place, we have the systems. How can we do this and really help restaurant brands? So that was when my team and I formed this menu to market program, which became this full service mechanism for restaurant brands to take products to market, and based on their popular restaurant concepts. So that's how PNC started. That's kind of where last several years since COVID, I've been building that side of the business and building all these really innovative, cool products. And then last summer, one of my products was being co-packed at Ice Cream Factory, and that's the milkshake one right behind me.
Nice, very cool.
Yeah, and they were, they were going to close. So that was going to affect my client, my business, everything, to not be able to have that co-manufacturing arm in place. So I ended up buying the company. So
That's incredible.
now we're kind of basically centralizing distribution, centralizing warehousing. Everything's kind of moving into the Missouri area, and making it work.
So clearly, based on everything you've just told me, you have tremendous operational expertise. And I'm guessing that came from a pre-financial crisis career, if I'm reading into this correctly, and then you ported that into the food space. So what was that kind of great financial crisis career? What were you doing before that?
So before that, I worked as a management consultant for banks. So
Okay.
banks would hire the company I worked for to come into businesses that were in trouble. And if they were struggling or losing profit or couldn't keep their financing in place, we would go in, analyze the business, kind of figure out what were the strengths and weaknesses, all of those things, and then implement fixes so that the companies could keep their lines of credit. So that was my job before basically the crash in 2008, and I really loved it. But I saw a lot of different kinds of businesses. But I would say manufacturing wise, I had to learn a few lessons the hard way. Yeah,
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
beginning it was difficult. And I didn't know, there were so many things I didn't know in the beginning and I had to figure it out. And it was some of those were expensive lessons and I didn't win. I didn't pass them all with flying colors for sure.
Yeah.
It was
No,
a
for sure. Manufacturing's tough, especially food manufacturing.
yeah.
Razor thin margins, huge volume. I mean, the
Mhm.
distribution side of things. But I'm really curious about this menu to market idea you came up with because this really touches on kind of one of Jimmy's rallying cries, mine too, which is the whole chef driven, not lab driven approach to CPG products. And so, kind of your menu to market is this idea of taking like hero products from flagship restaurants, right, and then putting them on the grocery store shelf. So how did that develop? Where did you come up with this idea of, hey, let's take the hero products from the best restaurant brands, restaurant groups, and put them on the grocery store shelf, and we'll facilitate that end to end?
Right. Well, it's basically a food truck guy came to me back in
No way.
COVID and he said, "Hey, I have this product. I want to turn it into a CPG." And so at first it was just a consulting project. But the more I got into it, I realized what an opportunity this was because restaurants benefit from a parallel revenue stream. They really need that to be able to scale. A restaurant is going to scale a couple of ways. Either they're going to keep opening locations, which is every time you open that new location, you're going to hit a ceiling pretty quick on how much capacity you can run. Or if you go the franchise model, that's great too. But again, you're hitting those ceilings all the time. And so what I love about CPG and retail is that you really don't hit those ceilings. I mean, there's just unlimited. It really can scale in a multiplication way instead of just incremental sales. So it really does give restaurant brands an advantage in if they have this parallel revenue stream, they set it up well, and we fully manage it. So they don't have to go figure out how to do this. They don't have to add head count. They just let us do what we do and they own it at the end of the day. It's still theirs. We do not do the whole, some of these restaurant brands, the big national brands, will sometimes go into a licensing deal where some food manufacturer will pay them a little royalty and then that company really owns it. Well, I didn't see how that really benefited the restaurant brand. They want to build something that adds valuation to their brand, to their whole platform. And so we've built this whole model where the restaurant owns it. If it's at some point in the future when they want to just do it without us, they can. It's theirs. They own it. So to me, that was an important piece of this. But when I came up with this, when I started digging into this concept, what I think brings the most value to the retail side and why restaurants can be more successful than just, your grandma's marinara sauce, right? It's because they have a brand following. They already bring incremental sale. They drive incremental sales to that retail shelf because they have a following. They have people that are proven that they like this product and love the brand. So when we go to retailers, we're David against Goliath. I mean, we're up against the major food companies. They buy the shelf space. They don't have to earn it. They just buy it. And they haven't really, there's not a lot of innovation in the big food brands. So how do we make ourselves competitive in that environment? How do we win is we come in with innovative products, something that categories never seen before. We bring a brand following. We bring an audience. And then we kill it on the sell-through side where we're really managing that shelf, doing a lot of demo events, bringing in the social media side of this. So we really feel like if we can get that retailer to give us that shelf space, we keep our spots because we're performing at the shelf and these brands bring a tremendous audience that retailer might not otherwise have.
Yeah, you said the magic word, which is sell through, right? When it comes to staying on the shelf, that's everything. And it doesn't matter how many doors you knock down in the first, 12, 18 months. If you don't sell through, they're just going to close. You're not going to be on that shelf anymore. And it's funny you mentioned starting with a food truck, as the way that you kind of pilot this program. That's where I come from. I come from the food trucking world. So we're actually kind of doing something kind of similar to what you're describing, where we have a hero product. We do Colombian empanadas, and and they're frozen, ready to fry. So they work really well for going into, especially into the food service space. So kind of our first pilot was a bar where we would sell them these frozen, ready to fry empanadas. They'd drop them in their fryer, and it was just as good as whether it was on our truck or in their store. That
Right.
expanded into doing an MLS stadium. So now we've got our empanadas on a branded stall. That's our brand, but we don't run it. We just supply the empanadas, and they operate it for us.
Right.
We moved into having another MLS location. So yeah, this idea of having like chef driven or restaurant driven brands that already have that built in following is so huge.
Mm-hmm.
People ask me all the time, Daniel, are you ever going to get on the grocery store shelf? And what I tell them is yes, but what I want to do is kind of follow what you're describing, which is build the awareness and the brand first, whether that's through building a chain of trucks or just different endpoints, whether it's bars, coffee shops, food hall stalls, MLS stadiums, food trucks, and then once that awareness is there and that following is there, we know the sell through will follow on the shelf. And the example I always give people is California Pizza Kitchen doesn't have to market in the freezer section, right?
Right. Right.
It flies off the shelf
Right.
because the awareness is there. So I
Mm-hmm.
think you've really hit on something there. How much has that program grown since you began it? So and when did it start? Like how long has this been running?
Since 2021 is when I really started with the first product. Unfortunately, that first product never made it to the shelf. The product itself was really great. I mean, it was super. I don't want to describe it too much because we're going to get to the shelf. But the
Nice.
reason it couldn't get to the shelf was it was such an expensive product, and they didn't have a brand following. So we couldn't. The first part of it was just manufacturing at any kind of a reasonable amount, and we never ever cleared that hurdle. And really, that client could not clear the hurdle today, even until until we unless we find overseas. There's a lot of things we're still working on for that first product. But after that, we took on some other products, and those have done extremely well. And we have about 31 brands in the 32 brands now in the portfolio. We just have a system in place. We engineer these products from day one. We take clients through kind of a market validation study before we ever even begin to develop the product. And so we're looking at Nielsen data. We're looking to see, what's happening at the shelf, what's going to give them a competitive advantage. We go through that process so we really can engineer a product that is designed to perform in a retail environment. And so these products tend to be very successful when they get there. And we learn a lot as we go. So a good example is our Seven Sister Scones product. Seven Sister Scones was a very, very successful brand. They had one restaurant in Georgia, and they did DTC across the country. So they sold millions of scones, right? And they wanted to do a retail strategy. So when we first started working with them, the idea was to put them in the in-store bakery with all the other scones. And we started doing that due diligence phase and the analysis, and we're looking at it going, no, you're going to compete with the in-store brands. You're going to compete for price, which is never a good thing with a new brand. And so we got to come up with something innovative. So we really explored how do they make these scones to begin with, and we realized that there's a point in that process where they stop and freeze that dough. Now we have a bake at home scone product, and it's doing extremely well. That thing came out of the gate. We sold out in the first month. We've already in second production, and it's just done extremely well. That product is in both food service channels and in retail. But it's things like that we are always curating a product to perform at the retail level, and you can't assume anything, and you can't come to market with just another product that's like everything else, because then you'll be competing on price. So it really is, that's part of our process. Sometimes it takes 6 months, sometimes it takes a year. It's all about how do we make this product extremely innovative and different and wow factor when it hits the shelf.
Yeah, Jimmy always talks a lot to me about how the freezer section is experiencing tremendous innovation right now after kind of
Mm-hmm.
sitting stagnant for a
Yep.
very, very long time. And now you're seeing tremendous innovation there. So brands like Seven Sisters are really innovating there. But yeah, you kind of hit upon the same kind of thing that I did with our empanadas, which was there was a point where it was like, hey, it's stopped here. It's frozen. We
Yep.
can do something here, right?
Yep.
And all of a sudden that was your launch point to be able to get scalability, right? Which was, hey, at this point, the product does not lose freshness. So if it gets to the store shelf or it gets to the food service endpoint and they bake it off, it's going to be just as good as if they got it in the restaurant, which is magic. It
Yep.
really is pretty magical.
Yeah.
So you've done this now with
It's going
over
to be not. It's
30
going to be
brands.
better. It's going to be
Exactly.
better because that product, when you pull it out of the oven and it's hot and it smells so good in the house, oh my word, it's fantastic. And you don't get that from going to the bakery and buying something that was made 3 weeks ago.
That's an excellent point. Yeah, exactly. Like if you had gone the traditional route and put it on the shelf next to the other bakery products, it would have been a bloodbath on price and everything, but also been an inferior experience. Whereas now you're able to engineer like a better than restaurant experience, which is insane to think about. Like we think of that the restaurant experience is like the pinnacle of what's possible, but it's like no, there's actually, like you said, there's ways to innovate beyond what's possible in a restaurant setting. That's extremely exciting for people like me who who want to eventually get to that point to see that hey, this is possible because other people have the people like you have already done it. So beyond menu to market, you obviously have tremendous capability. You guys do a ton of things, manufacturing, distribution. You kind of cut your teeth in manufacturing. You mentioned some of those like early uh, expensive lessons, right? We've all had them. I've
Yeah.
done it too. I've thrown entire batches in the trash, right? I mean, I
Yep.
think we've all done that at some point. What do you think were some of those early lessons that kind of helped shape the trajectory or the way that the company grew from that point forward, post financial crisis to now?
Mm-hmm. I think before in my first couple of manufacturing facilities, just learning compliance, right? There was the team didn't always understand. We had to be USDA before we were ready to be USDA. Made quite a few mistakes in the early days about just not being able to get open and deliver on orders. So I'm not misunderstanding how much work it takes to get those kinds of certifications in place and oversight. So I think in the beginning that was one of them, and also the financial side. I mean, I just did not fully appreciate how much cash flow it requires. But so those were lessons learned early on. I really did try to surround myself with people who knew more than I did about it, and we pulled out of that. And now it works really well. Now, ice cream factory. When I came into this environment, there's a lot of challenges there. There were. We've really come a long way. It's only been since October, but we're SQF certified now. We have our systems just keep improving every day. Our capacity is right now. What I inherited was a plant that's 90,000 square feet, right? And plus the warehouse. And so it's a huge footprint, beautiful infrastructure. It's right in the middle of the country, but they were using about 20,000 square feet of production space. We can only produce with current equipment on a good day about 5,000 pints of ice cream, which is nothing. That's one day's order. That's one order. So we have now expanded the footprint. We brought in all this equipment, getting electrical upgraded. All of those things are being done right as we speak. All of it, the electrical is being implemented first, of course, but the equipment is purchased. It's done. It's ready to plug in. And all of that will be in place by April, kind of worst case May. That expands our capacity to 80 or around 70 to 80,000 pints a day for comparison. So it's a 3,700% increase, right? We're just, it is a totally different animal with good systems and the right equipment and basically utilizing that footprint. So totally different animal than we started with 6 months ago, but I'm really excited about what it's doing for our clients because that plant, even though it's an ice cream factory, we also do baked goods. That part's expanding as well. Right now we're only doing a couple thousand pounds a day, but we'll be at 30,000 pounds a day by April, May. And then the second floor of the building is going to turn into savory. So we'll be able to, we have a lot of products on the menu to market side that need a home for manufacturing. So we're bringing in we're upgrading the facilities on that second floor to be able to accommodate those products. So I think it's been, as much as I never intended to go buy an ice cream factory in the middle of the country, I see how it's really helping our brands. And
Absolutely.
where we can get a home much quicker, we can get to market much quicker.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you mentioned a couple of things there that a lot of early brands miss when they decide to manufacture in house, and that is how expensive and difficult compliance is. Jimmy ran into that when he was starting to manufacture his own cookie dough at scale, right? Getting HACCP plans fully fleshed out and making sure those facilities are actually compliant. You may have the plan, but does the facility
Yeah.
actually meet that standard, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the other part is just how incredibly capital intensive it is to manufacture your own product without the help of a partner. It's insane how much cash it takes, and the cash cycle, right? A lot of these early brands don't realize that you're going to tie up capital for a very long time, longer than you would like. And all of a sudden you start seeing them do things like, they're selling their POs, right? And trying to factor those to get some cash in the bank, right? So yeah, without an experienced partner like you guys to help them make that happen, it's a much harder row to hoe. So I
And I
guess
think
for
that's, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, go ahead, please go ahead.
I think that's another thing that we help our clients with is that forecasting side. So a good example is what you're talking about, factoring invoices or POs. One of our products got picked up by a very large retailer, and it was going to require almost $4 million in cash flow because of the initial production and then the next production and then the next production while you're waiting for that first check to come in, right? Because even though you get the PO today, the clock on the 30 days doesn't start running till you deliver. So that's another 30, and then you got another 30, and they're never on time. So it's about 6. So you can have a 90-day swing. So I was telling the client, you're going to need about $4 million to cover yourself for this period of time, and they didn't have that. And so we went to the retailer and renegotiated the door counts so that they could accommodate it within their own cash flow cycles, and everything worked out really well. But a lot of brands would just take the deal, right? Just take the deal because, oh my gosh, that's a huge deal. It was a $20 million deal. That was a great deal. But not if you can't afford it, and not if you're going to give away all your margin to factoring companies. And, they're still getting to the 20 million. It'll still happen. It's just going to take a little bit longer. But is it better to take a little bit longer? Because I think some of these, it's an ego play, right? We want to
Absolutely.
And I think that it's more important to keep your margin and really control that and make sure that you're going to be able to be sustainable. And if you give away all your margin to the factoring companies, it's going to be tough to ever recover from that.
Yeah. I mean, I know so many people in my space that manufacture their own product, and they're stuck in factoring hell forever, right? They just end up in this loop where you end up giving away margin, and then you're out of cash, and then you do it again, and you end up in a cycle where it's hard to break out of. It's really hard, and then you end up raising, right, and giving away equity to try to make it work. And not to say that raising isn't a bad thing, is a bad thing necessarily. Like there's times when it makes sense to sell equity. It can be a very good thing, but if that's the reason you're doing it because of mismanagement, it's a very poor reason to raise equity. So we've covered a lot of different bases here. We've covered, you've done the manufacturing piece, you've done the menu to market piece. Talk to me about distribution. What does that look like for you guys?
So distribution, when I started when I started building menu to market, I knew that was going to be a pinch point, because if you go with the major national distributors, there's quite a few problems associated with that. First of all, the chargebacks are uncontrollable. So there are companies that exist, entire companies with hundreds of employees, and their only job in this world is to control the chargebacks and monitor chargebacks from these big distributors. So I knew we didn't want to go down that road. Second of all, if you get in with one of the major distributors, you're going to get lost. They have millions of products, and all of a sudden your little guy doesn't have any attention. And it's just almost impossible for new and emerging brands to get any kind of traction if that's their distribution model. So I knew we had to reinvent that wheel and say, how can we create a distribution network that's going to give our brands a chance to be successful? So we did that. We basically built our own DSD network. So we do DSD distribution, our own trucks going door to door to door for some major retailers. And then we partner with regional distributors. I love working with the regionals because they know their territory. They're going to service that store high touch, and they do a great job. And they can cover a lot of territory. So we'll work with regional distributors. We have our own trucks wherever we need them. And we've built a network. We're in all 50 states. There's nowhere, even in Alaska or Hawaii, that we can't cover. With those doors, it just depends on the retailer. But we had to build that network because otherwise our clients wouldn't have a fighting chance. They'd just get lost in the shuffle and they'd never make a dime.
I can't tell you how many stories I've heard of people talking about, we delivered this pallet to the distributor and it disappeared. Literally, it just vanished. And then they're proceeding to cost.
their sales teams will just give away free fills like it's candy. So they will not require a commitment from the retailer. They'll just say, here, let's give you everybody a free case of this. And then it ends up in the discount bin because it wasn't even properly shelved or properly marketed or anything, or it sits in the back until somebody says, you got to come buy it, it expired. Like, it's just, there's no, I don't know how other brands do it. But
They light the cash on fire.
we're not doing it. We have our own merchandisers in the field. So every store gets serviced every week where our employees, not someone else's, our people go into the store. They know we know how many units are on that shelf, how many have moved since the week prior. We manage that shelf. I look at that retail shelf as a piece of real estate. That is my job, to drive traffic to that store, to that shelf, pick that product up, put it in the cart and go check out. That's my job, not the retailers. And not the distributors. That's our job. So we really focus on it. And that's what makes our brands very, very successful. And even as new brands, they're coming out ranked number one, and Fancy Freeze is ranked number one in its category since it came out in June of 2023. We've never ranked below number 4 in any store that we're selling in.
You're kind of offering this like CPG as a service almost, right? This like end-to-end experience from like conceptualizing the product all the way through to like making sure it sells through, and then the life cycle of the cash flow and everything else. So I have to think that came from your consulting background, right? That idea, because that's not common in the CPG business to do all those different things: distribution, manufacturing, consulting, life cycle, revenue life cycle management. Like, did that come from your previous like world, like that way of thinking? Because that's not common. Most people just, they silo in, I'm a distributor, I'm a manufacturer, I do consulting, I'm a broker, right? I'm a brand. And they don't see kind of that holistic environment that you've created. I mean, that had to have come from your previous exposure.
It came from me doing it for my own products for those years, because before COVID, I was doing it for our own products. We were on the shelf. And when I first started thinking about menu to market, the first thing was, I'll just build a product. We'll build a really cool product. And then I realized, well, okay, now this client gets a broker, and then what? Broker's going to get them on the shelf, and then what? Or the broker's going to put them into this distributor, and then what? So you can build this really beautiful product that's super unique and different and gorgeous and custom and just beautiful. And customers are going to love it. And then what? Right? If you don't have the support on the next side of this, then what? And I just watched these other brands just fail and fail and fail because they were not properly supported. And also, frankly, if I'm going to build that product and I'm going to engineer it, it's my little baby. I love these brands and these products that we've created. I feel like they're mine. Even though I build them for a client, I treat it like I own it. And so I want to make sure, I want to see it all the way through.
So in one sense, you kind of built the company that you would have wanted when you began, in a sense. Yeah, yeah.
But I also built the company that restaurant brands need, because they do not have they don't know anything about CPG. They don't understand how you can get into deep water real fast if you don't understand what you're doing. And so I just feel like we built something that helps them and helps them be successful. Sometimes it's a challenge. Sometimes it doesn't happen as fast as they want, especially when you're innovating. I have a product that should have been a frozen product. I told the client in the beginning, this needs to be frozen. This is where this needs to sit in the frozen section. And they were absolutely not. We want it to be shelf stable. And shelf stable is great for for DTC audiences, and it's great for costs and things like that. Retailers weren't taking it because it was going to sit on the shelf in the shelf stable section, right next to products that this one was high $8.99 MSRP. It's sitting next to $2.99, $3.99 in that space. I'm like, it needs to be frozen. But sometimes the client just wants to do their own thing. So unfortunately, they're not all home runs.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have to say, you know what, this isn't gonna work. But when we are able to do our job, which is engineer a product that we know is going to perform on the retail shelves, the client wins, everybody wins. We scale in a controlled fashion so that the clients have a chance to grow. But that's the biggest challenge. Sometimes it takes longer than than people want, but that's where we're at. But yeah, I built this thing because that's what they need.
Yeah.
They need to be able to have the whole end-to-end process without having to figure it out on their own once we give them a product.
Yeah. So I guess in one sense, working with Jimmy was really unique because he had already done a lot of the heavy lifting in that respect. He had done the franchising thing. He had built, the retail side, DTC, and he'd already done CPG, but he was tired of manufacturing his own product, right? He had the formulas dialed in. He had that all done. So what was that like working with a brand that's, kind of already on the shelf and successful, but just tired of making their own product and meeting that compliance and that financial burden of trying to manufacture their own product? How's that different from working with these like restaurant all the way to the endpoint of the store?
So it's just more transactional because it's just co-manufacturing. So under Ice Cream Factory's model, it's just a co-manufacturing deal where we're producing the product, we're working with them to make sure that it hits their marks for quality and things of that nature, but it's a deliverable. We really deliver it to the client, and then that's it. We don't deal with anything else beyond that. So we have a lot of clients in the ice cream side it's just transactional. We're just producing the product. They have their own networks, their own brokers, their own partners, and that's great. The other side of what I love about that is because I don't take every product. I will not broker a product I didn't engineer because it comes with its own set of problems. We just don't do that. So I have to know that I've solved the problems that we're going to face before we get there. And I do that through that engineering process. So we don't broker everybody. We have lots of people that want us to, and that's wonderful. And I appreciate that. And it's fantastic. But we say no more than we say yes. And so it's just the nature. So the fact that Ice Cream Factory can do co-manufacturing and keep that transactional, that's all it is. We can work with any broker in the world that they want to work with, and their distribution trucks can pick up and go. That's wonderful. And we love that kind of business. Ice Cream Factory can just produce and produce and produce.
Yeah. Yeah. For you, that's kind of, it's easy to reproduce that kind of business. Yeah. The life cycle of going from restaurant to all the way on the shelf is a much longer process. And I'm guessing, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm guessing you typically have a bunch of these in development in the pipeline at any given time because they're not all going to make it, right? Like you mentioned, some of them just don't make it all the way to the shelf. How many brands do you typically have in this development pipeline at any given time?
So I would say somewhere between 18 to 20 are in development all the time. We're adding a new brands every month, at least one new brand every month. The ones that we're going to take it to market do well. Like if we are able to do what we do. Usually we're going to find out in a phase one, the analysis phase, if it's not going to work. And then I don't take them on, right? The thing is, back in the early days, if the client really wanted to do something, I would just go along with it, even if I didn't think that was really in their best interests. And I don't do that anymore. Like if we're just not in alignment on what the strategy needs to be, then there's a million other people that can take them to the store and they can have a broker and they can do their own thing. I want to make sure we're in alignment because I've done this a long time and I invest in these products. We did not make money on that product on the shelf for quite a while. It takes a minute to get the legs under it. And so if I'm going to put that much man hours into this, not only from the R&D side, but also once it hits the shelf and our merchandisers servicing that shelf and our sales teams getting those shelves, I have to know that we're bringing a product to market that is going to be successful. So the ones that hit the market, the ones that we're actively promoting do really well.
Nice. So you talked previously about trajectory getting into the store, right? And how sometimes too big, too early can kill a company. This podcast is primarily targeted at people that are new in the CPG space that are just learning and getting their feet under them. That's a huge piece of advice. What other intro advice if you're a young brand, maybe you've just, raised your pre-seed round and you're starting to develop, what other advice would you give young CPG founders, common pitfalls that they can avoid as they're starting to get off the ground?
I would say take your ego out of it because it's really wonderful to say, oh, I got a Walmart deal, right? We got Walmart. You don't want Walmart for a while because Walmart's you're going to have a lower MSRP at Walmart. So if you're coming into the market, first of all, you want to know, how am I innovating this category? You cannot come into the market with another barbecue sauce. It's got to be innovative and different. So what's your angle there? Focus on building your brand. If you do not have an audience, then you're just another sauce on the shelf. No one's going to know. You have to bring an audience. So that's the focus there. The third thing would be focus in your region. You can get into local shelves on your own. You don't need a broker for that. And you can, people start out all kinds of ways, and look at regional distributors to help you once you get that shelf sold. So regional, I would start regionally and then really go deep before you go wide, and take the ego out of it. So I have clients, not menu to market clients, but I'm talking about now that I'm at Ice Cream Factory, where we have clients that have hit pretty big shelves, Target and all these other ones, and they're wide, right? And now they're having a really hard time scaling because they're just so focused on these many doors for this one client, and they're not able to grow beyond it. And that's because you have to get laser focused on that performing at the shelf. It's really hard if you're starting out wide and have all these doors to try to manage and you don't have infrastructure behind it. You're not going to be able to service that door. So now, a year later, you no longer have all those 1,000 doors at Target because they've said, nope, you're not performing. And now you got nothing. So if you will focus first regionally and focus on the stores that make the most sense, who's your audience, right? Who's your shopper? And I have products that I will not put in certain stores because that's not our shopper. You have to know who your demographic is and then market to them. So my best advice for new brands is make sure you're doing something unique. Make sure your packaging is on point. You're sitting on a shelf next to national brands. Do not look like a mom and pop that just, you're never going to get outside the region if you do that.
Absolutely.
So packaging design is really important, that you're making, you have to get attention on the shelf. So branding, stay focused. Don't let your ego get in front of you. Make sure that you're going deep with these regional players before you try to go wide. And deliver on the shelves that you have. We started Fancy Freeze, that little one right there, who's won national award, international awards now, and it does very, very well. Started out with 3 doors.
Incredible. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a friend who got into the beverage space, and it's a tough one. Yeah, and he kind of did. He made all the mistakes that you just mentioned. So it was a THC. Oh no, I'm sorry. It was a CBD beverage, right? When CBD was brand new and hot. We had Recess was catching fire, and he said, "I'm going to create a CBD beverage that's functional, adaptogenic." It got massive early traction, got into a whole bunch of doors. And as anyone who's worked in beverage space knows, it's massively capital intensive. And before they knew it, they lost all those doors because of all the reasons you just stated, which was they were up against people that already had incumbency on that shelf, and they were looking at trying to compete against people that already had movement in the market, and it wasn't unique enough, it wasn't differentiated, it wasn't as innovative as it needed to be. So they've since pivoted to doing a category that I see exploding right now, which is less caffeinated energy drinks, right? So this is a genius play where I'm seeing in the beverage space where people are doing, hey, let's do a caffeine drink that's maybe 100 milligrams, right? And then it won't keep you up all night, right? So if you're that office worker at 3 p.m., we just interviewed a girl named Vo with Space Time drinks, and what she did, which was so exceptional, was she followed the playbook you described, but she did it intuitively. She got into offices as her distribution, right? She got into lunchrooms. Nice. Just absolutely genius. So yeah, like to your point, you don't have to hit the nation all at once. Right. You can build that regional brand awareness and loyalty first and go deep first. And that's really the right way to do it. I wish I could get more founders to understand that, because they're so intent on scaling as rapidly as they possibly can. And they burn through their Series A or their seed checks, and then they're out of money, and they're stuck with no capital. So yeah, so that kind of covers your advice to the new founders. To the ones that are a little farther along, say someone like Jimmy, they've been in the market a couple of years, they've made some mistakes, but they've got some market traction. Do you have any advice for those guys that are saying, hey, we're not new. We've been in this 3 to 5 years now. We've made some mistakes. We've learned some things. We're indoors now. We're selling through. What would you tell those people?
I would say really focus on your strategy. What's your end goal here? So like Walmart's a good example, right? I love Walmart. We love to do business with Walmart. But is it, when are you ready for that? And are you, everybody wants to get ready for that, right? So how have you positioned yourself to make sure that you're going to be able to have the margin that they're going to require? And have you kind of exhausted your premium outlets at the higher MSRP to prove your traction? So I would look at that and say, what's the strategy? And then going forward, what stores do we want to target and which ones do we want to make the most sense for our brand for this growth scale? The other thing I would look at is your brokerage relationships. So if you have a broker who is taking you into these doors and you're going too fast, then you've got to rein them in a little bit. And this is why you want to have scale. You want your brokers to go in there and make these deals. But if you go to a retailer and you're really transparent with them and you say, listen, we cannot spend $60,000 on slotting fees for this shelf. We're a new and emerging brand. We don't have that. This is what we can bring. And now you're bringing in, we're going to do the demos. We're going to bring this influencer audience. We've got influencer campaigns that are going to support this. We're going to go X, Y, Z. You're going to have your whole plan for them and how you're going to drive incremental sales. Make that case to the retailer. Have your broker making that case. A lot of brokers will just give away whatever they're going to require it. They're going to require, I've heard that a bazillion times. Oh, they're going to require, you have to pay that to get on that shelf. And I call baloney on that. I negotiate everything as if it's my own money. And we get those deals all the time. Retailers want the innovation. They want a new audience to walk in that door. That's something that a brand that's maturing, if they're focused on their social audience, if they're focused on their brand, if they're focused on who is their demographic, they know it clearly. Now you can go to a larger retailer, get 2,000-3,000 doors in that deal and say, this is what we're doing. We're bringing this audience. We're going to, and then you support it and do it and deliver on that, and you'll continue to scale. But I think that it's important when don't just scale for door count, scale for strategic aligned doors that match to your brand, match to your demographic, and are going to help where you're going to be able to deliver. Because the last thing you want to do is scale and then not deliver.
Absolutely. So I also have a question because I've looked at the manufacturing side myself. It is challenging, but it's interesting. So we are currently, like my brand specifically, we're looking at a factory that has a couple of thousand square feet excess capacity where we might be able to actually put in a production line to make our own product and then hopefully put it into distribution. So if you're talking to somebody who has, say, experience in the food space, maybe they're a restaurant operator, maybe they're a CPG brand owner, and they're interested in the manufacturing space and getting into that, what advice would you have for that person that's like, hey, I love the idea of maybe manufacturing my own product, or I want to be a co-man for other people. What would you tell that person?
I'd say that I would build that plant to be a co-man for other people, because what I like about, and that's what we do at Ice Cream Factory, right? They're co-man and we're private label. And I have another plant in Montana where it's all private label. And that plant runs on autopilot. It's fantastic. It's at full capacity, but we do frozen meals out of there. What I would say is in manufacturing, if you can have some co-man clients and some private label clients, and they're kind of keeping your revenues right here, and you know you're getting paid for that right now. You're not waiting. And so that money is going to come in and kind of keep your baselines covered. Now your own product productions you can put into that, and you have a better chance of being able to scale and be successful at that. If the entire cost of your plant is supported by just your own product sales, it's going to be tough in the beginning. And yeah, if you take off and you're in all the Walmarts, all the Targets, all the Krogers, all the Safeways, Albertsons, all the major players, HEB, Publix, if you're in all those, fine, you don't have to worry about it. But until then, if you can support other products, it's going to help pay those bills while you scale. And it can really help kind of hit your break-even point with just your co-man jobs. That's what I would do. All of our products, until I bought Ice Cream Factory, all of the menu to market products were under co-man. So co-mans are a great way to scale for a new brand. And I don't think there's usually any reason not to use a co-man. Let people be good at what they do. I would never have bought Ice Cream Factory. Frankly, I wasn't looking for it. I did it out of necessity. So now we're going to maximize it because that's what you do, right?
Right.
We're going to make that plant run 24/7, but we're going to leverage every square foot of that place. But I wasn't looking for it.
Yeah.
I think if you're going to move into manufacturing, you ought to really go in with a plan, pre-sell that production space.
Yeah.
You can pre-sell that line before you ever open it. We've pre-sold 2026 and 2027. We're at 80% capacity already with the new line coming in, just because that's what you do. Once you know you're going to do this and you've bought your equipment, you know that it's happening, get to work on sales. Sales covers a lot of these things if you're bidding your jobs properly and you're being, you know your margins and all of those things. Then you got to sell. But if you're going to go into manufacturing, you got to have a plan for that because
it's expensive.
It's expensive, and it's expensive to run every day. And especially if you have a day where things go badly and you just threw all that product on the ground because something happened, right? Equipment failure or something went wrong. You got to have the systems in place. And if you're going to be a manufacturer, I don't think you even bother if you're not going to be SQF. Like, don't even bother. If you don't have the plan to have some kind of a GFSI certification behind it, don't bother, because your team isn't going to have the systems they need to really be safe managing food. You're not going to be able to sell in any of the major retailers anyway. Yeah. So just go in. Yeah. That was the first thing we did at Ice Cream Factory when I took it over, was get it SQF certified. They had kind of been trying to get there for a while. It was like the highest priority we had.
Yeah, and it makes complete sense, because for them at that time, they were manufacturing internally for their own needs, and it wasn't as much of a, hey, let's sell this capacity to other people where we can actually get in those big doors, right? And they're going to look, that's fantastic advice, especially the idea of like using private label to help pre-sell line capacity. That's huge. Like, that's worth the price of admission for this podcast. So anyone out there who's thinking about opening manufacturing, me included, that was fantastic advice. So thank you for that, Gail. We're getting close to the end here. We've got just a few minutes left. I would love to dive into what's next for what you're doing. I mean, you've got a lot of different irons on the fire, and it's growing exponentially, it sounds like. What's next for you guys?
Great products.
Okay.
We really expanded the R&D. We've expanding R&D capability out of Missouri. So I have R&D arms in Arizona and in Montana, but I'm kind of really concentrating on Missouri now, building that plan out, because it's all about innovation. That's how we're getting the jobs that we're getting. So I am basically right now just really excited about some of the new products coming out that are coming out in the next couple of months even. So some really, really innovative, cool product lines and brands. So I love that. I love creating new products and getting them on the shelf. The other side of this is Ice Cream Factory is really expanding. Obviously, our capabilities are expanding. So I'm really looking forward to that. That's my area of focus, is first ice cream fill line, then the bakery, then the savory lines, the kettle lines. And I just want that plant running 2 shifts every single day, all the time, because it's got the capacity. It's a beautiful plant. The other thing that we're doing is we're building right across the street from the plant, because we need it. We're building a frozen warehouse facility that's going to hold around 22,000 pallets for frozen storage, which is a huge opportunity for not just us, but the other food brands in the region, because there's a massive shortage of frozen storage. So
yes, there is.
Yes, so that if you're following me on socials, you're going to see a lot more about that, because we're going to be able to let brands pre-buy their slots out of that 22,000. We're going to have a big chunk of it, of course. That's for our own use, but there's going to be a plenty there that other brands can lock in if they want to, because that is a big thing, to have frozen storage in the middle of the country where you can get to any area of the country relatively quickly and affordably. So it's a really big opportunity, not just for us, but for all the other frozen food companies in the region.
Yeah, I think that you just hit. I mean, this the need for more frozen capacity is so huge, and it feels like it's not being really addressed by much of anybody. So you're literally having to build it yourself, which is insane to think about in one sense. Um, so if you're a new brand, say someone like me, I've been food trucking for several years, right? We've got a hero product. What would the process look like if somebody was like, "Hey, I've got this phenomenal, hero product that sells great. We've got local traction, and we're interested in getting into that, you know, menu to
Mhm.
market program." How do they reach out to you? How do they get in touch? And what does that first like initial steps look like? Because I know it varies after that, right? It goes in all kinds of directions.
So they can go to our website. You can go to menutomarket.com or pivotnorthconsulting.com. It all goes to the same place. You can go there to learn a little bit more, watch a video. There's a whole video for restaurant brands to kind of see how the system works. But our process is basically 3 steps. And the first one is phase one, where we do a deep dive into the Nielsen data. We do a pro forma, financial pro forma, so they know exactly what this is going to cost over the next 2 years if they're going to do this for everything: insurance, inventory, marketing, all of it, packaging. And then we look into what's their social media footprint. What is it going to take to get the kind of audience that a retailer's going to need to get their attention? So we build this whole business plan. And at the end of that, we present it to the client. The client then has the option of saying, okay, let's move forward. Or we have the option of saying, it's not a good fit. And that happens 4 out of 10. We have to say, sorry, unless we can make these changes, it's not going to happen for you. So that is basically a standalone service that we run, that phase one analysis. If we move into phase two, then we quote that project and we say, this is what it's going to cost for us to build and develop your product. And that's the finding a co-packer. It's getting the packaging designed. It's all of it. And all the legal compliance, FDA thing, everything. That can take 6 months. Sometimes it takes a year. It depends on the product and how much work we have to do. As soon as it's a physical product, it's ready to go. We can start selling it. It's in manufacturing, in production. We're moving into now brokerage. That's phase 3, brokerage and distribution, where our sales teams are now getting to work, getting its shelf space. And we follow the retail roadmap that we put out in day one, phase 1, which is these are the stores we recommend for this launch. So that's our process. And every client's project looks a little bit different because we're trying to find the innovation for everybody.
Fantastic. All right, so we're getting close to the end here. Is there anything else you want to say? And please, before we end, tell people how they can get in touch with you, where your social handles, all your websites, whatever you want them to have in order to be able to reach out to you.
So on Instagram, I'm Ask Chef Gale. So back from my
Love
favorite,
that.
Ask Chef Gale. PivotNorthConsulting.com is our website. That's where you can, all the social links are there and the emails, and you can grab time on my calendar, I think still. And then the Ice Cream Factory CO, icecreamfactoryco.com is where you can learn about the ice cream factory. That's going through a rebrand. So that website's going to start looking a lot differently over the next 60 days. But that's where you can reach me. And then I'm
Fantastic.
plugged in.
Thank you so much. This was a fantastic episode. Thanks for taking the time. I know you're very, very busy, so thanks for taking the time to make this happen. Sorry we couldn't get Jimmy on this one, but I think we had a fantastic conversation. I learned a lot personally. I'm going to follow you on all the platforms, and yeah, thanks for taking the time to make this happen.
Awesome. Well, it was really fun to get to chat with you.
Fantastic. All right, see you guys. Peace.
Thank you. All right. Bye.
Don't go anywhere quite yet.